After that performance, you take your mind back to the debate, the subsequent interviews that were meant to alleviate any concerns. That did nothing. And I think even this performance today, Paul, he looked even more frail than he did a couple of weeks ago. Yes, he has had COVID. He's just come out of isolation. We saw him quite unsteady on his feet as he arrived back at the White House yesterday. But this is not going to help him in any way in terms of his political opponents saying, well, if it's not right for you to run for a second term, how can you be okay to run even for this next 6 months till January?
He was a weak, diminished and pathetic figure. We understand what has been happening, and we understand that emotionally for anyone to give up a dream job is a difficult thing to do. You saw in what he said that I deserve a second term. However, I've decided to unite my party, and therefore to unite my party, that's all he says. He doesn't say, I'm therefore getting out of the way. Instead, it's the pass the torch stuff. But that was a white knuckle ride. Is he going to finish the sentence? Is he going to finish the word? And I don't say that as hyperbole about a person who, if I had a vote, would never have voted for him. That was frightening to watch. That is the President of the United States who still has all the power of the presidency until January 20 of next year. Now, I know there's political consequences if Harris becomes the president and running against the sitting president, blah, blah, blah. But he also turned around and said that what he wanted to do in the next 6 months was to have Supreme Court reform. Now, that is something that is like one of the tippy top of the Democratic left shopping lists.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to advocate for that or to fight for that. So what you saw was the battle between the ego of the man, the desperation of the people around him, the lie that we have been told increasingly as his health has deteriorated, and an inability to match the moment. This was frightening.
I think so too. But for months we've been talking about really his ability to not only perform when the cameras are there, but what about his ability behind the scenes? And what it has done, Paul, and you and I have discussed this many times, is that, yes, America's adversaries are watching this. The faith in his leadership, but it also does one thing that I think is particularly insidious, and him being there undercuts and diminishes the great democratic process that he just spoke about. How is he sitting in the White House, in the Oval Office every day, actually making some of these really tough decisions? He couldn't be. It has to be the staff, the unelected staff and the machine around him doing that. So, I mean, that is the big concern here. I just want to say one thing and get your response on the Supreme Court reform he flagged. Yes, you're right. He can't... He obviously, from that performance, cannot be the front guy out arguing for it, articulating the details. But doesn't this play right into the wheelhouse, given her history with Kamala Harris?
Well, I think that it actually is yet another hospital pass, because what they're talking about here with Supreme Court reform is term limits or age limits. I don't think people are going to have particular issues with that. But Supreme Court reform can also mean adding members of the court until you get a majority that you like. Yeah. Now, supposedly the great
But I'm talking about the Roe v. Wade. Now, this is what Kamala is talking about.
Of course, but I'm saying the counterpoint, right? So she can use that to say this broken institution needs to be changed by getting rid of people once they hit a certain age, and funnily enough, that age will be sort of timed at the moment to the more conservative judges. But I think that means that Kamala has to come out and now has to answer. Do you agree with Supreme Court reform? If so, how so? Packing the court is a terrible political idea. Yeah. And for a bloke who constantly talks about democracy, 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 well, he should have pulled out before a primary. The people in the Democratic Party should have pulled out before a primary, because the open process to select the next Democratic nominee was a whole bunch of people not running against Kamala, her saying a whole bunch of thank you phone calls, 14 million people get pushed to one side, and we're all supposed to believe that they're the people who believe in democracy more than anyone else. Please.